Professor Reilly. How about a liberty agenda, a competition agenda, the sort of environment that exists in so many other parts of the country? It's never discussed. You never hear it discussed by people in the media or in Hollywood and so forth. How about a real liberty agenda?
If you're talking about for the black community, I would fully support that. One thing I will say is that I think that more competition economically and politically would be an excellent thing for the African American community. I would love to see the black community split our vote 50-50, because that would imply that both political parties might actually do something for us. What you see right now is that every 4 years, with a few exceptions, there are a few long-term serving black civil servants, but Democratic politicians come out of the woodwork during election years and make impassioned, racialized pitches to the black community. And this is true no matter who the GOP candidate is. I mean, when Mitt Romney, who's a centrist, anti-racist Republican, was running for president, Joe Biden's comment about him was, he's going to put you all back in chains. Mitt Romney's not going to bring back slavery. No matter which political party you vote for, he's just not going to. And this year, the exact same line has been used against Donald Trump. In political science, by the way, we find that the mainstream media covered most GOP presidents as they've covered Donald Trump. The reaction to him isn't a result of his sometimes over-the-top offensive language. It's also how Romney was discussed. It's how Bush was discussed. But in regard to Trump, Joe Biden said, "You ain't black," to the radio host Charlemagne the God if you would consider voting for the Donald while he's in office. So I don't think that sort of virtue signaling every 4 years does much. Again, obviously, racism is real, but today, simply put, the biggest predictor of how successful you become in this country is not residual prejudice around you. The most successful groups in the country have a competition or a liberty agenda. Nigerian Americans, Japanese Americans, East Indian Americans, Lebanese Americans, these, not white or black Americans, are the wealthiest Americans. And I would definitely like to see a lot of that agenda transition into deprived communities, whether poor white communities or African American communities, although clearly my focus is on African American communities. I'd like to see enterprise zones. I'd like to see charter schools as an option for striving minority parents. HBCUs, a good number of which are private, I'm proud to teach at one, do a fair amount of good in this arena, but that's after high school. But yes, I would like to see as many chances to competitively perform in the hood as there are to competitively perform in the suburbs, and that would do much, much more good for poor people, especially poor black people, than the endless ghost hunting for new, more refined forms of racism.
But you do understand what that means. That means trying to figure out how to defeat one-party rule in these cities and how to defeat the teachers' unions in these cities and a whole bureaucracy and a whole a group of surrogates that have grown out of these one-party rule cities. That's going to be very difficult.
Yeah, just very quickly, public sector unions in general, to me as a businessman and an academic, are problematic. Private sector unions are great. With public sector unions, you don't really have two parties coming to the table. You have the union made up of middle-class employees and executives in the public sector, and then you have the politicians to whom these unions give sizable donations. Those are the two parties negotiating, and those are not two distinct parties. By the way, in terms of real solutions to the issues of policing, a lot of those would involve tackling police unions. You sometimes hear that Camden got rid of the police. No, they didn't. What they did was break the police union, give cops some basic training in related fields like social work, and change their name, but they have 70% more boots on the ground in terms of what are in practice police officers than they used to. So the more you can take on these public sector unions to achieve things like actual body cameras in every department, a discussion about no-knock raids, removing these various complex forms of immunity from contracts, perhaps I'd like to hear officers' reactions to that, the better you'll see, the better a relationship between police and the communities they serve you will see.
All right, Professor. I want to thank you very, very much. You've been extremely edifying, and God bless you.
You as well.
We'll be right back.